Mobile marketing around the world is similar but different to the US. By this I mean that you would recognize many of the mobile technologies, solutions, strategies, and tactics being employed by marketers in other parts around the world. They would seem similar to what you're used to, but they would also appear different because they are being deployed in different ways. This is because the adoption and use of mobile is subject to local, cultural, social, and economic conditions, which means that what works in one country may not work in another. In this video, I'll highlight some of the key differences. There are obvious differences like language, geography, average per capita income, and average mobile penetration rates. But to understand market differences, you also should consider factors that are harder to see and/or measure, like consumer behavior, because this is affected by cultural norms and standards. Let's consider some of these examples. Japan and Korea are often considered the most sophisticated countries in the world in terms of consumer adoption of mobile and acceptance of mobile marketing. The Japanese have had mobile internet access since 1999. Camera phones first appeared in 2000, and the Japanese had access to app stores in 2001. The Japanese, unlike the US, decided early on to invest in a single type of mobile network technology, which meant that the cellular infrastructure was immediately standardized and commoditized. Carriers did not need to compete for infrastructure dominance, and there was no market fragmentation, which let the ecosystem quickly gain economies of scale and focus on adding value through the offering of cutting-edge mobile handsets and compelling content, services, and experiences. This advantage still exists. Add to this the softer factors, like the Japanese love of technology, and the fact that the Japanese language uses characters instead of words means you can fit meaning into a small screen. And you can start to see why mobile marketing was adopted there faster than anywhere else in the world. And yet Japan is also referred to by many in the industry as being the Galapagos Islands of mobile, because the adoption of mobile there has happened in isolation to the rest of the world. This is partly down to technology decisions mentioned above, but also cultural conditions. Those same differences can be seen to be completely different effect when looking at emerging economies. In Kenya, for instance, 60% of the population living on less than $2.50 a day has access to a mobile phone. Mobile penetration in Kenya, for instance, is at 75%, with 12% being smartphones. You might make the assumption that this means Kenyans would be behind in terms of mobile marketing. In fact, it can be argued that in some aspects, Kenya is ahead of the US. Kenyans have, for instance, adopted mobile payments faster than almost anywhere in the world. A mobile payments service called M-Pesa, Pesa is Swahili for money, is now used by over 2/3 of the adult population, with 43% of the entire GDP of the country passing through it. M-Pesa uses the most basic mobile messaging technologies and does not rely on smartphones and data plans. It has been responsible for introducing banking to people who were previously unbanked and is cited as allowing micropayments that empower rural farmers to trade with each other in a completely new way. And in Brazil, where free Wi-Fi is hard or impossible to come by, and carrier data services are very expensive, Coca-Cola provided a happiness refill program where people, the program specifically targeting teens, could get free Wi-Fi credits by interacting with Coca-Cola promotional happiness refill kiosks. They would place their phone in the kiosk just like they would a cup to refill a Coca-Cola, and they'd get free credits. In addition to cultural and socioeconomic differences, you'll encounter different industry, corporate, and governmental technological execution approaches, business models, and regulatory differences. For example, in text messaging, common shortcode registries are handled in different ways in nearly every country around the world. Moreover, each country and region around the world approaches consumer privacy data regulations in very different ways than in the US. Germany, for example, gives the most protections and control over data to consumers than nearly anywhere else in the world. Understanding these differences presents both a challenge and an opportunity for US marketers. US marketers can learn a lot from overseas markets. The challenge for marketers is to see what is happening elsewhere and then figure out what can be learned from it, and if it can be adapted for use in their home market.